Hello, today I'll be doing a video on the game A Column of Fire. This came out in 2017. I just recently acquired it on a sale for, I don't know, not too much. Figured I'd give it a try. It's in a series based on Ken Follett's books. I do have another one in the series called Pillars of the Earth, which I think is okay. And this I think there may be another one, and then there's a Column of Fire. So, anyway, let's get on with how to set up and play. First thing you'll do is place the game board in the middle of the play area. You'll place the four goods types somewhere near the board. You've got book, ore, cloth, and wine. Next, you'll separate the religion stones according to their color. You've got neutral, Catholic, and Protestant, and just place them somewhere near the board. Each player then chooses a color and receives 4 trading houses, 1 victory point disc, 1 action disc, 1 religion card, and 1 summary card in their color. So for instance, this is for blue. The player should take that summary card with the first half of the year section facing up and place that in front of themselves. Next, you'll take the Loch Levin cards, the 4 Loch Levin cards, shuffle them so that they're randomized, and deal 1 to each player. I'm setting up for a 3-player game. So we'll have one, after we've dealt them, we'll have 1 Loch Levin card left, which we'll just place back in the box. Players will reveal their Loch Levin card. It determines the religion they will start out with. It also determines the starting goods and starting location of their action disc. So players will place their religion card with the side with the religion that they're starting out with next to their summary card. So we see blue starting out as Protestant, green is starting out as Catholic, and red is starting out as Protestant. As shown in the back of their Loch Levin card, each player starts with 1 protection tile. And then the goods shown, so we see that the blue player starts with a book. The green player will start with a cloth, and the red player will start with an ore. We see that the blue player places their action disc on the action track that shows the brown ship. So that can be seen here. So they'll place their action disc there. The green player starts where the orange ship is located. So that will be here. And the red player starts where the white ship is located. That will be here. Players then go ahead and flip their Loch Levin card back over. Oops, I already flipped that one. And this one is flipped as well. Each player's victory point disc then goes on the number 2 space of the victory point track that goes up around the board. Each player is then given a set of 6 dice in different colors. You've got white, which represents England here on the board. You've got blue, which represents France up here on the board. You have orange, which represents the Netherlands over here on the board. And you've got brown, which represents Spain over here in this section of the board. You have purple. The brown and the purple are kind of hard to tell apart, but you have purple, which is a wild card die, and then you have a black die, which is your religion die. So each player gets a set of 6 dice. Each player will take their black dice, which is their religion dice, they'll roll it, and they'll put it on top of their religion card. This will determine how many rounds they must remain that religion, after which point they'll be able to decide whether they want to change religions or stay the religion they are. But each player will do this now. Alright, so we saw the blue player got a 5, the green player got a 3, and the red player got a 2. Again, that represents the number of rounds that players must stay that religion, and rounds in this game represent years, so each round is 1 year. Next, you get your deck of character cards and event cards, so each color represents a country. The orange is the Netherlands, the brown is Spain, the blue is France, and the white is England. You'll shuffle those decks up. They're mostly character cards, but there are event cards, I think 4 event cards in each deck. After you shuffle them, you'll put them kind of near the board next to their respective country. So up here next to the Netherlands. This one, if I had more room, I would put the Spain up above it, but I'll just put it over here. Take the deck for France, place it here, and the deck for England, and place it down here. You'll then turn over the top card of each deck. If you turn over an event card, you just discard it from the game. Otherwise, you put the corresponding religious stone there on top of that card. So for here we have a Catholic stone, we'll put it there. Okay, up here we'll flip it over. Again, we have a Catholic stone, we'll put it on there. Over here in France, we got an event, so that'll just be discarded from the game. We'll flip over again. If we got another event, it would be discarded from the game as well. This time we got a Protestant, so we will place that. And then finally up here Spain, we got an event, we'll discard that. And we got another Catholic stone, so we will place that on there. Next, you'll shuffle up these advantage tiles, place them in 2 face-down stacks up here in this section of the board, the upper left. You place your protection tiles in 2 stacks here on the cathedral in Kingsbridge, England. You have these 2 torches, which you'll just place somewhere near the game board. The rules state that the player who most recently has visited a church will be the starting player, and they'll take the starting player token, put it in their play area. The starting player does not change throughout the game. That completes setup for our 3-player game. Now we're ready to move on with how to play. Alright, so how do we play? Well, the game is played in rounds. Each round is made up of 2 parts of a year. You have the first half of the year after each player has done their first half of the year actions. Then the players will turn over their summary card to the second half of the year. Starting with the first player, they'll take all their second half of the year actions. Then we'll go in clockwise order. Once all the players have finished their second half of the year actions, then we'll go back to the first player, starting again with their first half of the year action. So let's talk about the first half of the year, not the beginning of the game. The first half of the year, or at least the first turn of the game, there's not much to do because there's only 1 card with a die on it. But as we'll see later on, as you get some character cards, then there's more die to rotate and more actions to take. But what you'll do in the first half of the year, starting with the first player, they'll rotate the die on their cards. Starting with their religion die, they'll rotate it down 1 year. So from 5 you go to 4, meaning 1 year has passed. So you've got, this player now has 4 more years left as a Protestant. And then if you had character cards, you would rotate the die on them down 1 year and then take the action shown on their card. So for example, if this player had these 2 character cards, they would rotate the die down 1, so this would go from 2 years to 1 year, meaning they'll have this character for 1 more year. And then they would get to take 1 ore from the supply. And if they had this character, they would rotate the die down to a 4, meaning they have this character for 4 more years. And then they would get to take a book. So you go from left to right with your characters, starting with your religion, and then from left to right with the characters you have. And we'll talk about when we get to the second half of the year how you gain those characters and place the dice on them. But I just wanted to show what you do in the first half of the year as you moving from left to right. You decrease each die on the card by 1, and then take the action shown on that card. Now, when you if you start the first half of the year with your die already on a 1 for the Protestant, then for the religion card, then instead of decreasing it because there's no 0. Now I will mention all the other dice go 1 through 6, but the religion die doesn't have a 6. It's got 2 3s. But anyway, if you start the first half of the year with your religion dice on a 1, then you re-roll it, and then you and then you get to choose your religion. So you can stay on the religion that you're at, or you can flip it over to Catholic if you're Protestant, or if you're Protestant you can, or if you're Catholic you can flip it over. And then you place that die back on there, and that's how long you'll be that religion again. If you start the first half of the year with a die already on a 1 on one of your character cards, since you can't reduce it anymore, you just remove the die, putting it back into your free supply of dice, and discard that card. It's no longer used in the game. Now I'm going to put this one back here. I just grabbed it from here to show it as an example. And again, so that's the same with all your character cards. If you start the first half of the year with those cards already have a 1 on their dice, then you just move the die back to your supply and discard that character card. A couple of other things to mention. When you decrease the die on your religion card, if you're the minority religion, in other words, you're the only one of that certain religion, for instance, there's 2 Protestants in the game currently and only 1 Catholic, so when the green player reduces their religion die by 1, since they are the minority religion, they'll get 1 victory point and move up 1 on the victory point track. Alright, so after the first player decreases all their dice and takes the corresponding actions on the character cards, and we go to the next player in clockwise order. They'll do the same thing. Each player will do that. Once all players have done that, then the players will flip over their summary cards to the second half of the year. And again, these summary cards just tell you exactly what I just said, what you will do. So once all players have completed the first half of the year, they'll flip over their summary cards to the second half of the year. And then starting with the first player, they will begin their second half of the year actions. So the first thing a player will do when they begin their second half of the year actions, again you do this in player order, starting with the first player, and then once they've done all their second half of the year actions, then you'll continue in clockwise order with the other players. But what you'll do is take all your free dice. Now remember, as the game goes on, you'll have characters that'll have some of these dice on there, so you won't always have this many free dice. Sometimes you may have 1 or no free dice. But if you do have free dice when you begin the second half of the turn, you'll roll them. And then you can choose one of those dice to allow you to take one of the available characters. So for instance, if you want to use your white dice, you could take the Ore Trader here, Ore Trader character. If you wanted to use your orange dice, if you had it available, you could take the Cloth Merchant here. If you still have your brown, if you want to use your brown die, you could take from Spain up here, you could take King Felipe II. And if you have your blue die, you could take from France this bookseller here. And let's talk about how you do that. So let's just say, for example, the blue player wanted to use their brown die to take King Felipe II. So they select, they say, they say which card they're going to choose. And they'll just set the brown die aside right now. I'm going to use my brown die to take from Spain King Felipe II. The first thing you'll do is take that religion stone from that character card and place it in the religion stone space for the country that that card belongs to. So in this case, Spain. So we would put one Catholic religion stone up there in that those spaces. If that fills the last religion space in that country, that means at the end of this player's turn, you're going to have a religious conflict. So to mark that, so you don't forget it, you go ahead and put one of these torches here as a reminder that you're going to have a religious conflict, because you don't do the conflict until the player has finished all their actions for whichever half of the year they're in. If a fourth stone happens to get placed during the first half of the year, then you would have the religious conflict as soon as the current player finishes their first half of the year actions. If the fourth stone gets placed during the second half of the year, then you'll have the religious conflict as soon as the current player that caused the fourth stone to get placed there, as soon as they finish their second half of the year action. So anyway, you'll place a torch there as a reminder that as soon as the players finish their actions and their turn is over, that you have the religious conflict. We'll talk more about the religious conflict here in a little bit. So let's continue on with the player's action for the second half of the year. They'll select the dice they want to use to take the corresponding character card. You'll take the religious stone off that character card, put it on the religious space for that country. You'll then place a trading house in the country that corresponds to the character card you're going to take, and you get to place it on the space that corresponds with the number on the die you're using. So for instance, we're using the brown 6, so we get to place one of blue's trading houses on the number 6 trading house space here in Spain, since we are taking a card from Spain. Next, you'll go ahead and take that character card, place that in your play area. If you already have some character cards, it goes to the right of the character cards that you already have. Then you take the dice you used to acquire that card and just place it on top of the card. The number indicates, as I mentioned when talking about the first half of the year, how many years that you will be able to have that character. So in this case, this blue player will have King Felipe II for 6 years. Then you get to use whatever the icon on that card states, its action is. In this case, the blue player would get 2 victory points. So they would just move their victory point marker up 2 spaces. Next, you'll flip over the next character card. If it's an event like that one, you read and do whatever the event is. We'll talk more about events here in a minute, but you just read and do whatever the event is, discard it from the game, and then flip over the next character and place the corresponding religious stone on it. So in this case, we would place a Catholic religious stone on there. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and put this back, and we'll talk about this when we talk about events. Well, this is probably as good a time as any to talk about events. So if you reveal an event card, you just read it. For instance, this one is: the Spanish Armada is destroyed in the fight for England. Each Catholic loses 2 victory points. So each Catholic player will lose 2 victory points, but you'll see protection, and it shows the shield there. So when an event would affect you, if you have a protection token, you can discard that to ignore the event on the, that would affect you. So any player that an event will affect, if they have a protection token, they can discard that back to the church and ignore the effects of that event. And then, as I said, you would just discard that event and flip over the next card. Now, if the next card is another event, then you would just discard that event out of the game. You can never have two events on the same player's turn. All right. So after you've chosen a die, rolled your dice, chosen a die to acquire one of the characters, placed the religious stone from that character on the religious space, placed your trading house. Now, one thing I should say more about trading house placement: if you acquire a character from a country where you already have a trading house, then you don't place a second trading house there. If the number of the die you use to acquire the character from that country is higher than where your current trading house, like if I had used a 2 previously to acquire a card from Spain, and then later on another turn I used a 6 to acquire a card from Spain, well, then I would just move my trading house up to 6. If I had previously used a 6 and that in the future turn I use a 4 to acquire a new card from Spain, then I don't lower my trading house to a 4, I just leave it where it is. So if you use a higher number, you move it to the higher number, but if you use a number equal or less, you just leave it where it is. For another example, if say the red player and the green player had trading houses here, and I acquired a character from Spain with a dice with a number 5 on it, well, I would normally place my house on the number 5, but you'll see green already has a number 5. Well, I still go ahead and place my house on 5, but then everybody gets bumped down, so the red player would get bumped down to 3, the green player would go to 4, and mine would go to number 5. Alright, so that's how that works. Again, if you end up acquiring a character to where you already have a trading house, that's how the placement works for that. So after you've done all that and acquired your character, taken action on the character that you acquired, the last thing you'll do on your turn is choose one of your free dice, one of the ones that's not on a card. So in this case I have 4 free dice: blue, purple, white, and orange. You'll choose one of those to move your action token on the action track. So when you move your action token on the action track, the number on the die you choose has no relevance, it's just the color. So if I choose the number 2, if I choose the blue die and I'm the blue player, I would move to the next space on the action track that shows blue, which is right here. So I would move to this space and take the action there, which shows a die with an X'd out die. And what that allows you to do is remove a die from one of your character cards or your religion die. Now if you remove it from your religion card, you just re-roll it and put it back on the card. If you remove it from one of your character cards, you put that die back in your available dice, and then you have to discard the character that you had. Alright, so that's what would happen if I chose the blue die. If I chose the white die, I would move to the next space that had the white die, so I would move here, and that would just let me get 1 victory point, so I would just advance 1 space on the victory point track. If I chose the orange die, then I would just move to the next space that shows orange, which is this one, and that would just let me acquire a good of my choice, either a book, a cloth, a wine, or an ore. And finally, with the purple die, I would move to the next purple die space. Now you'll see you can never land on an action space that's occupied, so I would move to the next available space. So because that purple was already occupied, I would move to the next one. That one is occupied, so I would have to move all the way around to here to this blue space, or space with the blue ship on it. And that would allow me to sell 1 good of each type that can be sold there in France. So blue is France, so I would look at France. This is the goods that can be sold there. You could sell one book for 4 victory points and one ore for 2 victory points if you had them. If you don't, then of course you couldn't sell anything there. So if you just had the book, you could just sell that for 4. If you just had the ore, you could just sell that for 2. Or if you had the book and the ore, you could sell them both for a total of 6. But you cannot sell in a country that you don't have a trading house. So until you have acquired a character there and placed a trading house there, you're not allowed to sell any goods there. So again, to move on the action track, you choose one of your available free die. You use that. Now you actually don't use it up. It doesn't get taken away, but you can only use one of your available free die. Choose the one that you're going to use and move your marker to the next free available space of that color. So if a player is already on that color, then you skip to the next one. So just like we saw, if this player wanted to use the purple, he would have to go all the way around to that one. If he used the blue, he would go there. If he used the white, he would go there, and so forth. So you choose a die, move on the action track, and take the action shown. After that, then that player has finished their second half of the year actions, and it would then go to the next player in clockwise order to begin and do their second half of the year actions. All right, a couple other things I want to mention before we go on. I mentioned how the purple die, when you're moving on the action track, moves you to one of the purple spaces. I didn't mention how the purple die works when you're using it to acquire a character card. The purple die is a wild, so you can use that to acquire one from either England, Netherlands, Spain, or France. So it can acquire one from any of those countries. That's why it's a wild die. But remember, any die that is used to acquire a character is placed on the character card and not available until you've gone through enough rounds that it's gone down to a 1. And then, as I mentioned, in the first half of the year, when a card has a 1 on it, then you remove the die back to your available dice and discard that character card. So after all the players have finished doing their second half of the year actions, you come back to the first player, flip the card over, and begin again with players doing their first half of the year actions. And you continue doing so, acquiring victory points from selling goods, using characters that give you victory points, from getting victory points on the action track, and so forth, until one player has reached the 50 victory point marker. After a player has done that, then you'll complete that round and then play one additional year, one additional round, and then the player with the most victory points will be the winner. All right, let's go back and talk about a few things. I had mentioned that when all the religion spaces in a country are filled up, then at the end of that player's turn, that event occurred where all the spaces got filled up. So let me just set one up for an example. So we'll say during a player's turn, they acquired a character which placed this final religion stone here in this religion space, so they would have placed a torch there to remind them that after they completed their actions for that turn, so say if they're on the second half of the year, after they finish doing their action on the action track and finish their second half of the year, then we resolve a religious conflict. So when you resolve a religious conflict, you determine which religion has the most religion stones there. Now neutrals are just ignored. So in this case we have 2 Catholic and 1 Protestant, so the Catholics have the majority of religion stones there. So the Catholic religion would win out in this religious conflict. So the player that is not a Catholic, so in this case it would be the Protestant players, the blue player and the red player, would have to remove their trading houses from that country. The players that have the majority then get to score points depending on where their trading house is. So in this case, the two Protestant countries would have to remove their trading houses. They would score nothing. The Catholic player, the green player, has their trading house on number 4, so they would receive 4 victory points. They would move up 4 on the victory point track. Then you go ahead and remove the all the religion stones that are there, and that conflict is resolved. If it happened to be a tie, and nobody had the majority, so maybe like 2 Protestant, 2 Catholic, then nobody scores and nobody has to remove the trading house, and then you still just remove all the religion stones that were there. All right, a couple of other things to mention. As I said, as you acquire characters, you'll end up putting your dice on the character cards. So it may come a point where you have all your dice on your character cards, and on your turn, you need to, it becomes your turn on the second half of a year. You need to acquire a character. Well, if you don't have any dice, or you don't want to use one of the dice you do have to acquire a character, so either if you're unable or unwilling to spend a dice to acquire a character, then you lose 1 victory point. If during your turn you don't have any dice to any free dice to move on the action track, then you just don't get to move and take an action on the action track. Let's talk about some other uses for victory points. You can always on your turn spend 3 victory points, and either way, in other words, go back 3 spaces on the victory point track, if you can, to remove a die from one character card and put it back in your free dice. Again, if you remove it from a character card, you lose that character. It just gets discarded. Or you can re-roll, spend 3 victory points to re-roll the die on your religion card. Or some events will put some of your dice, will put a dice on the Loch Levin card, and of course you can, they rotate down every turn just like the other character cards. When they get to a 1, and it gets removed at the beginning of the turn, where you would try to reduce that die just like all your other character cards, and then it would come off there and go to your free dice. But you can also spend 3 victory points to remove the die from your Loch Levin card if there's one on there. Another thing victory points can be spent for when you're moving on the action track. For example, if this player, decided to use their white die to move on the action track, they would, normally move to the first available white space. You can spend 1 victory point to skip that and then move to the next white space, which would, if this was blue moving, that would move them there to this space where they would get a protection tile. Or they could spend then another victory point if they wanted to move all the way up here to this space, which lets you either acquire 1 cloth, or you can sell 1 cloth in each of these countries. So you could sell one, you see it as the white ship, you could sell a cloth in England for 4 victory points. And then you also see it's got the brown ship, so you could also sell a cloth in Spain for 2 victory points. So again, a space like this lets you either acquire the good type shown, or sell one of those goods in one or both of those countries for the amount shown in that country's goods box there. But anyway, you can spend victory points to skip a space, but you cannot skip all the way back to your starting space. And when I was saying you could sell a cloth if you had it in Kingsbridge, England here for 4, and in Seville, Spain for 2. You can only sell, as I mentioned previously, to a country that you have a trading house. If you don't have a trading house there, you cannot sell there. And whenever you're selling goods, you can never sell more than, one good of one type to that country. So even if you landed, on this white space, which allows you to sell one good of each type to England, to Kingsbridge, England there, which Kingsbridge, I believe, is uh, invented for this game or in these books. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Lets you sell one good of each type uh, that's allowed, so one cloth and one wine here in England. Even if you had 4 cloth, you can only sell one. You can only ever sell one of each type to a country when you're selling there. I'm going to mention a couple of special rules for 3-player and 2-player games. So in a 3-player game, if ever when you're on the action track, if your action marker lands on one of the purple spaces, you can place a neutral religion die in that country. Besides, selling goods in that country that space normally allows you to do, you can also, if you want, place a neutral religious stone in that country. So that rule applies in a 2 or 3-player game. In just a 2-player game, there's also an additional, in each of the countries, you'll put a cross over one of the religious spaces. So in a 2-player game, you'll only have 3 religious stone spaces in each country. And there's a couple of other minor rules for 2 players that I'll just leave those for you to look up if you decide to play this game with 2 players. Other than that, I think we've gone over most of the rules. Let me look at some of the spaces on the action track, some of the icons we may not have covered. This one, as I said, lets you remove a die from one of your cards. If you move it from your religion card, you just re-roll it. If you remove it from any of your other cards, you put it back with your free dice, and any character card that was on is discarded. This one again, it lets you either acquire that one of that good, or you can sell one of that good in the colors depicted on it. So in France, you could sell a book for 4, and in Netherlands, you could sell a book for 2. But again, only if you have a trading house there. This one lets you get that many victory points. This one lets you acquire one good of your choice. We've talked about this in the country that corresponds to that color. So England, in this case, you can sell the goods that they purchase, one of each type if you have them, for victory points. So 1 cloth for 4 and 1 wine for 2 if you happen to have them. This symbol lets you add or remove a Catholic religious stone to any country of your choice. This symbol lets you get one of the protective protection tiles. We've already talked about that type. So I think that pretty much covers most types. Well, this one lets you add or remove a Protestant religious stone from any country of your choice. And this one lets you acquire an advantage tile. So you just grab one of these and place it face down in your play area. If depending on what the icon is, like this one shows an or. So it says if that players can use these during a move, as many of them as they want during a move. So I'm assuming that means when it's their turn and they're moving on the action track, they can then discard one of these to get the item shown. So in this case, you could discard this to get an or. Many of these advantage tiles will show victory points, and if you get them that show victory points, you just keep them face down in your play area, and you will score those victory points at the end of the game when you're scoring victory points. Now I mentioned the the game ends the year after somebody managed to get at least 50 victory points. If you do continue past victory points, past 50 victory points, you just keep going up on the track and add 50 to whatever you're at. And then I mentioned the player with the most victory points wins. So let's talk about how we determine the victory points, because there's some end of game scoring. So of course it's whatever total your victory point marker is on. But players also receive 2 victory points for each trading house they have in a country. They receive 1 victory point for each unused protection tile they have in their play area. They receive 1 victory point for every 2 unsold goods tiles you have in your play area, rounded down. And then, as I said, victory points that you have on advantage tiles that you have face down in your play area. And then whoever has the most points is the winner. If there happens to be a tie, then the player who had the most unsold goods tiles is the winner. If there's still a tie after that, then the player who has the highest number showing on their religious card wins. And if there happens to be a tie there, then there is just no clear winner. Those players share the victory. All right, I think I've covered most everything. There may be some icons that show up on character cards or advantage tiles that I didn't quite cover here. We may see that in the example turns, but if not, there is a page in the rule book that shows all the icons and what they mean. So let me make sure I'm set back up how I was right after we did setup, and then we'll go on with some example turns. Alright, well, blue is our first player, so we start with the first half of the years where they rotate their dice on each of their cards to decrease them by 1. So the only card he's got a dice on right now is his religion, so he'll reduce that to 4. He is not the minority religion, so he doesn't score a victory point for that. Not much else to do on the first turn of the game, because that's the only card that the player has with a dice on it. So we move on in clockwise order to the next player. So we come to the red player. He'll reduce his religion to a 1. That's the only one he has, so that's pretty much it for him on this first turn. And we'll just say now we move on to the next player. The Catholic player, they'll reduce theirs to a 2. And so they are the minority religion. The other 2 players are Protestant. This one's Catholic. So they do have the religious minority as shown here, so they get 1 victory point. So we'll move them up there on the victory point track. And that completes the first half of the year. So now we'll move on to the second half of the year. So players will rotate their summary cards. Alright, so we start with the blue player here. Blue player will roll their dice. See what they got here. Then they'll use 1 to acquire a character from one of the countries. Well, they are Protestant, so they probably want to place Protestant stones. So the only character on the board that's a Protestant right here is the bookseller. So they'll use their blue die to choose the bookseller in France. So we will first place their religious stone on the religious space. Because we're using a 6, we get to place our trading house on the number 6 in Paris. And we take the character card and place the die we used to select it. So we'll have him for 6 years. We get to take the action, which is to acquire 1 book. So that place it with our other good that we already had a book, actually. We then flip over the next card here, and we'll put you'll see they need a Protestant religious stone on that card. Alright, then we select one of our available free dice to take an action here on the action track. So I think I'm going to use my purple die. And so I will move to the next available purple spot. That one is used. That one is used. So that one brings me up here to the blue, which is France, purple spot. So then I can sell goods in France. I do have a trading house there. I can sell one book for 4 victory points. I've got 2 books, but I'm only allowed to sell one of each possible good type. If I had an ore, I could have sold that as well, but I don't. So I get 4 victory points for selling that book. And that will end my second half of the year actions. So now we go on to the red player. So they'll begin their second half of the year actions. They'll roll their dice. Then they choose a character. Oh, and I forgot this when I when the blue player finished their move here, because we're playing a 3-player game, they could have put a neutral religious stone there, but I forgot to do it, so I'm not going to bother with that. Anyway, we're now here with the red player, so now they get to choose a character with one of the dice that they have. They are Protestant as well, at least, for the next turn anyway, if they, but of course they can choose to stay that anyway. So they may want to have a Protestant religious stone placed as well. The only one is this captain here, but that's a good card as well because it lets you sell goods in a country for 3 victory points. So they're going to use their blue die. They're going to take the captain in France. So first we place this religious stone. Then the red player will place a trading house. They used a number 5, so they place it on the number 5 there. They then acquire this card, put their blue die on it, and then they get to take that action. So I can sell one good in a country, one of these goods in a country where I have a trading house. So I do have a trading house in France, which does buy ore. I do have an ore, so I will sell that for 2 victory points. Alright, we then flip over the next card here, and we'll see that places a Protestant stone as well. And now I choose one of my remaining free dice to move on the action track. So if I chose the orange, I would move here where I could either acquire an ore or sell ore. I don't have any to sell. If I chose the white one, I could go here and get a protection tile. If I chose the purple one, I could move to the next available purple, which would be here, which would let me sell in Spain, but I don't have a trading house in Spain, nor do I have any goods to sell. If I chose the brown one, I could move here and get 1 victory point. I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to choose the brown one, move here because that's got the brown die, and that gives me 1 victory point. Right, that's going to end my second half of the year action. So now we go to the purple player. I mean the green player. They will roll their dice. Let's see what we got. All right. Well, I think they're going to use their brown die, and they're going to get King Felipe. So first we put the Catholic stone here in Seville, Spain. We then place a trading house of the green player. They're using the brown die, which is a 4, so they'll place it on the 4 space there. They then get to take the King Felipe card, put it in their play area, put that brown 4 on it, and they take the action, which gives them 2 victory points. So 1, 2. We then flip over the next card, which is an event, which we saw this one before. So the Spanish Armada is destroyed and fight for England. Each Catholic loses 2 victory points, but we only have 1 Catholic, and they're going to use their protection, so that just goes back here, and they get away without losing any victory points. The other players are Protestant, so they won't lose anything, and now this is just discarded. So we then reveal the next card, which is Father Alonso, and we place a Catholic religious stone on his card. Alright, then we get to use one of our remaining free dice to take an action on the action track. So I think we will use the white die, which moves us here, which will allow us to either acquire a cloth or we could sell a cloth in England, but we don't have a trading house there, but we can also sell a cloth in Spain, where we do have a trading house, but we only sell it for 2, where if we were able to sell it for here, we would have got 4. We do have a cloth, so we're selling that in Spain for 2 victory points. Alright, and that's going to end the last player's actions for the second half of the year. Of course, we didn't get any religious conflicts, so I didn't talk about those. But now we go back to the first player, so everyone will change back to the first half of the year. So we start with the first player doing their first half of the year action, so they'll reduce their die to a 3, so they don't have to change their religion yet. They will reduce their bookseller here down to a 5, and they get to take the action of acquiring a book. So we will get that here, put it in their area, and that's all the cards that he has with dice on them at this time. So that ends his first half of the year actions. He's not the religious minority, so he does not get a victory point. Alright, we come to the red player. Now, their dice on their religion is already a 1, so now they re-roll. And they got a 1. They got to choose whether they want to be Catholic or Protestant. I think they're going to go ahead and stay Protestant, but they'll be re-rolling again next turn anyway. This one will reduce to a 4. And then this player gets to take this action. They could sell a good, one of these goods. Unfortunately, they don't have any, so they don't get to do anything. Alright, our green player, the Catholic player, reduces to a 1. So they'll be Catholic one more year. King Felipe goes down to a 3. And the green player gets 2 victory points. Alright, that will end our first half of the year actions. We're back to our starting players, so everybody will flip over to second half of the year. So the blue player will roll their free dice, see what they get. They got a bunch of 6s. They need to choose a character card. They could again choose one with a Protestant, but they might want to get some trading houses in other countries so they can sell goods in other countries besides just France, although they only have books, so I don't know that that's necessary right now. So we're gonna but they don't have a blue. They can't. Their blue die is here. They could use their wild card, their purple die, to acquire this guy. So maybe they're going to do that. They're going to use their purple as a wild, so that lets them choose any. They'll choose the wine merchant here. So they'll place that religious stone there. They already have a trading house on the 6, because the one that they're using is lower than that. They just leave it where it is. They go ahead and take their wine merchant. They're only going to get him for this one turn, because anyway, they do get to get a barrel of wine, so they add that to their goods. Alright, now we got to flip over card here and put is a Protestant, so that goes on there. And then they'll use one of the remaining action die they have to move on the action track, so either orange, brown, or white. So we'll say they're going to use their brown, so they move to the next available brown spot, which is here, which gives them an advantage tile. We'll have them choose this one. They get to look at it, so they can use that to get another barrel of wine whenever they move on the action track. And that is going to end the blue player's turn. So we will now go over to the red player. So they will roll their action dice or free dice. Now they have to acquire a character. Because they are Protestant as well, they know if they go ahead and take this character, they will place that religious stone there and will trigger a conflict which will allow them to score. So they're going to want to do that. But unfortunately their blue dice is used too, so they'll have to use their purple wild in order to take this card here from France. So the first thing we'll do is place there. Now we know that's going to trigger a religious conflict, so we have to place the torch there and then finish our turn. So we place that there. We already have a trading house. It's at higher than a 2, which is what we use, so we don't have to move it down to the 2. We then acquire the card, place our die on there, then we get to take the action, which is we can either take a victory point, or they can raise or lower the number on one of the die on one of their cards, either the religion or one of these. Even this card themselves, they could raise that to a 3 or lower it to a 1. I think they're going to take the victory point, so they'll just move up 1 on the victory point track. Alright, now we flip over this card. We got an event. It says, hundreds of French Protestants are murdered during a church service. As a consequence, the Huguenot Wars erupt. Each player with a trading house in France must turn 1 die to the number 3 and place it on top of his or her Loch Levin card. So that would be the red and the blue player. So they would have to take one of their dice and turn it to a 3 and put it on the Loch Levin card. Or they can spend a protection to not do that. I think the blue player is going to spend a protection to not do that. And the red player is also going to spend a protection to not do that. So that will just get discarded. And now we'll flip over this next one. It is Charles de Lorraine. Anyway, we got to put a Catholic religious stone there. And now we choose one of our remaining dice. We've got brown, orange, or white to move on the action track. Well, I think we're going to use our brown, which moves us to the next brown, which would be here, but we skip over that because it's occupied, so we move to the next brown, which puts us here, which either lets us take a book or sell a book in either France or Netherlands. I don't have a trading house in the Netherlands, and I don't have a book anyway, so I will just take a book, put it in my area. And that's going to end my actions, the red player's actions for the second half of the year. So now we would resolve religious conflicts. We've got one here. The majority is obviously Protestant, so any Catholic there, the only Catholic is green, would have to remove a trading house. They don't have one there anyway. The Protestants get to score according to where their house is, so the blue player will get to score 6. And the red player will get to score 5. So red, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the blue 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we remove the torch and we remove the religion stones that are there. Alright, now we move on to the green player. They will roll their dice. Then they will choose a character. I'll just say they're going to use a white die. Oops. They're going to use a white die to take the English character. That is going to put a Catholic religious stone, so they're not too happy about that. But they do get to put one of their trading houses there in Kingsbridge. They then get to take this character, put that number 4 white dice on it, and they get to take an ore. So they add that to their supply. And we flip over the character card there. That's going to be a wine merchant, and he gets a neutral religious stone placed on him. And then we get to use one of our remaining character die to move on the one of our remaining free die to move on the action track. I think I'm going to pick my orange die, so I move to the next orange space, which lets me get a good of my choice. I've got an ore. I think I will take, I know since I have a trading house here, I might want a wine or a cloth since I can sell that for 4, but I also have a trading house up here. I think I'm going to take that cloth, so I'm going to get a cloth and put that in my play area. And that would end the green player's turn, and we would go back to the first player, so all the cards would now flip back to first half of the year. And I think with that, I'm going to wrap it up. I think you can see exactly how the game plays. Whenever you do have to roll your, both of these players in this first half of the year are going to have to re-roll their religion die. Whenever you re-roll your religion die, you get to choose which religion you want to be, so you can change from Catholic to Protestant whenever you re-roll that. But otherwise, I think you see how the game works, and you keep going until one player on their turn reaches 50 or more victory points, and then you'll finish that that round, and then play one additional round, and then do the scoring as I talked about earlier. But I've only played this once and just solo to learn the rules, so I can't say for sure whether I like it or not. I didn't, in my one solo play that I was doing yesterday, I didn't really find a good strategy. One of my players actually won by quite a bit more than the other 2 players, so probably take a couple more plays to come up with a good strategy. I think it might be okay playing it with other players, playing it with myself, as 3 players. I can't say I really enjoyed it that much, but I'm not going to make any decision on it until I've at least played it with some other players at least once. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it.